It starts quietly. No goodbye, no final message, just a sudden stop, and a silence that doesn't end. At first it feels like confusion, but it's not. It's a shift. The moment the noise dies, something far more powerful begins to move beneath the surface, the rearrangement of control, attention, and emotion. Most men mistake this quiet for rejection. They chase to feel relevant again, to fill the void, to fix what's fading. But silence isn't punishment, brother. It's exposure. It reveals who's acting from peace and who's reacting from fear. Because silence isn't stillness, it's strategy. A psychological storm disguised as calm. The one who used distance to dominate begins to feel its weight, and the one who once chased starts to breathe again. The game you thought was over is just beginning, only now the rules have changed. In this video we'll break down the 7 hidden phases of that silence. What happens inside her mind when control stops working? What happens inside yours when validation stops mattering? And how this quiet collapse becomes the making of a stronger, calmer man. So if you've ever been cut off without warning, if you've felt that cold, confusing silence wrap around your chest, stay right here. This isn't the end of your story. It's the blueprint for your rebirth, like this video if you're in that storm right now. Comment "still" standing below if you chose calm over reaction. Subscribe to Stoic Station, where we turn heartbreak into discipline and silence into strength. Start this journey now, because what comes next will change everything. Phase 1. The quiet trigger, when noise dies and the ego feels the shock. It never begins with chaos. It begins with silence. Not the peaceful kind that clears your head, but the kind that hits like a wave after an explosion. No goodbye, no explanation, just the sudden absence of what used to feel permanent. Her texts, her voice, her presence. For a man who gave everything, his consistency, his attention, his heart, this silence doesn't feel like peace. It feels like collision, like the air has been sucked from the room. You replay moments in your head. Did I say something wrong? Should I reach out? But that voice isn't your intuition. It's your ego, desperate to feel relevant again. The ego craves reaction. It equates being answered with being seen, and being seen with being enough. When that validation vanishes, panic sets in. You start mistaking the withdrawal for rejection and the stillness for loss. But the truth is more complex. What you're really feeling is not her absence, it's the ego's collapse. The slow unraveling of an identity built on feedback, attention, and external reassurance. Silence, brother, is not emptiness, it's reflection. It's the mirror you've been avoiding, the one that doesn't show who you were to her, but who you've become without her. And when you sit long enough in that quiet, something powerful starts to surface. Awareness. You start to see just how much of your self-worth was dependent on response, how much of your peace was borrowed from her presence. This is where the transformation begins, quietly and without witnesses. When the noise fades, what's left isn't weakness, it's the raw outline of who you really are beneath all the chasing and proving. Most men never reach this point because they rush to fill the silence, sending messages, trying to fix what's broken, feeding the same ego that led them here. But those who can stay still long enough to face the void, they don't just survive it, they evolve inside it, because silence has a way of stripping you down to what's real. It dismantles the performance of confidence, the illusion of control, the addiction to being needed. It takes everything temporary and leaves only the truth, what's left of you when nothing and no one responds. And that's where inner power is forged, in that breath between reaction and restraint. The moment you stop asking, "Why did she go silent?" and start asking, "What is this silence trying to teach me?" That's the pivot point between collapse and creation, between ego and essence. Silence isn't here to destroy you, it's here to rebuild you. It teaches you to stop searching for echoes of yourself in someone else's attention. It demands that you learn to breathe without applause, to stand without reassurance. That's what true strength feels like. Not loud, not dramatic, but grounded, unshakable. Because the world might have gone quiet, but inside that quiet, something unbreakable is forming. A man who no longer depends on being seen to feel whole. And this is just the beginning of the collapse, the silent initiation into your own becoming. When the noise dies and your mind wants to chase what's fading, pause. Because in that pause lies your first act of power. So, brother, when the silence hit, did you panic? Or did you pause? Because the way you handle that first quiet minute doesn't just reveal your pain, it reveals your potential. And if you can hold still through that storm, what comes next will change everything. Because silence, once mastered, doesn't break you, it crowns you. Phase 2. The ego's disorientation. When validation disappears. When you stop hearing from her, something inside you doesn't just feel sad, it panics. And here's the part most men never admit out loud. It's not panicking because you lost love. It's panicking because you lost confirmation. Confirmation that you still matter to her. Confirmation that you're still wanted, still chosen, still significant. That's how the ego survives. It doesn't live on truth. It lives on reaction. It lives on being needed. It lives on that subtle illusion of control. The idea that at any moment you could reach out and she would still respond. When that illusion breaks, the ego doesn't quietly accept it. It starts tearing through your mind looking for proof that you're still valuable. You start rereading old messages, replaying old words, rewriting old moments. You start asking questions that sound romantic but are actually strategic. Did I say something wrong? Did I push too hard? Did I not give enough? What you're really asking is, do I still matter? At first you think she's already past it. She seems calm, collected, unbothered. You picture her moving on, laughing, going about her day while you're here stuck in analysis mode. And that image of her being fine while you're unraveling is what drives most men into desperation. You start to believe she's won. You start to believe silence means she has more power than you. But listen to me. She's not free either. She's not magically unaffected. She's avoiding the same silence that's staring you down. She just hides from it differently. You drown in thought. She drowns in distraction. You stay up replaying every word. She stays busy not to hear her own thoughts. Different behaviors, same running. If you could see past the performance, you'd realize this. Neither of you is at peace. Both of you are doing the same thing for different reasons. You chase to feel relevant. She withdraws to feel powerful. Two egos, opposite reactions, same wound. That wound is the fear of losing emotional leverage. For you, the fear is, what if I've already been replaced? For her, the fear is, what if I lose the position of being desired? That's why she pulls away. Not always because she's finished, but because distance lets her feel in control. And that's why you reach out, not always because you're still in love, but because closeness lets you feel secure. You see it now. Control isn't connection. Control is just fear dressed up as strategy. The problem is, your ego doesn't know that difference yet. So it tells you to move toward her, fast, before you lose her. It pressures you to fix it, to fix her mood, to fix the silence, to fix how you feel by getting a response that makes you feel safe again. Here's the paradox. The more you chase, the more she retreats. And the more she retreats, the more desperate your ego becomes. You start negotiating with yourself. I'll just check on her. I'll just send one last message. I just want to clear the air. But none of that is about peace. It's about relief. You're not trying to solve the relationship. You're trying to silence the discomfort inside your own chest. That's what most men don't see until it's too late. They think they're fighting for love, when in reality they're feeding their own anxiety. They think they're holding on to something meaningful, when what they're really holding on to is the feeling of still being chosen. This is the point where most men lose themselves, not because they cared too much, but because they mistook validation for value. You started believing that she's answering me means I matter, and she's ignoring me means I'm nothing. Brother, that is not love, that is dependence. And dependence is the leash the ego wraps around your throat. You can be a strong, disciplined, smart man in every other part of life, work, fitness, responsibility, and still become emotionally hostage to one person's attention. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. You've been trained to measure your worth by how much you're wanted, and silence exposes that conditioning in a way nothing else can. Because silence exposes the illusion. It doesn't just show you she's quiet. It shows you how much of your inner stability was hooked into her voice, her reassurance, her softness, her presence. It forces you to confront the reality that your peace was borrowed from her replies, her tone, her attention. And now that it's gone, you feel unstable, not because you're broken, but because the crutch you leaned on is no longer there. You are, for maybe the first time in a long time, standing without external support. And that feels terrifying, but it's also the entrance to your power. You are in a moment right now that can define you if you let it. This is the space where you either spiral or you rise. You can keep chasing her energy to feel okay, handing over more and more of your dignity just to get one more hit of reassurance. Or you can pause and see what's really happening. Life is demanding that you learn how to breathe again on your own. You learning to self-regulate in this moment is not coldness. It's the start of emotional sovereignty. It's the moment the ego stops steering and the man starts standing. Because the truth is this: when validation disappears, you meet yourself, not the version of you she reacted to, not the version of you that performs strength to impress her or calm her. You meet the version of you that exists in absolute quiet. You meet the man you are when no one is clapping for you, and that man is either built or he begins building now. So here's the question I want you to sit with, and I want you to be honest about it. Has this silence actually broken you, or has it just revealed how much of you was still unclaimed? Think about that before you react, because what happens next isn't just heartbreak, it's revelation. And if you handle this part right, this won't be the moment you lost her. This will be the moment you finally stopped losing yourself. Let's step into it. Phase 3. The exposure. Silence strips away every illusion. When the noise fades, truth begins to echo. The silence you once feared doesn't just separate two people, it reveals them. It peels away every layer of pretending, every shield of composure, every false sense of control. Suddenly, what was hidden underneath starts to breathe in the open. The calm confidence she wore like armor begins to crack, and the version of you that always chased starts dissolving in the stillness. There's no performance left to maintain, no distraction to protect the ego, only reflection, raw and unfiltered. You start realizing how fragile the story really was. The texts, the attention, the reassurance you clung to, they weren't love. They were validation dressed as connection. Each time she replied, your ego whispered, "See, you still matter." Each silence that followed whispered the opposite. It's a cruel rhythm until you break the pattern. Because the truth is, you were never addicted to her. You were addicted to what her attention made you feel about yourself. And she's not untouched by this quiet either. She thought distance would give her power, but silence has a way of turning on its master. What she called control is starting to feel like emptiness. What she called independence is beginning to echo like loneliness. Pride starts to hollow out from the inside, and for the first time, she begins to sense what you've been living with, the echo of her own absence. Silence is a mirror, and mirrors never lie for long. Because silence, brother, is not neutral, it's pressure. It tests what's real. It crushes what's fragile. Under that pressure, everything false breaks first. And that's exactly what's happening now. The masks are slipping. The performances are collapsing. You can't fake calm when your chest is on fire. You can't pretend you've moved on when your hand still hovers over the phone at midnight. Silence makes liars out of the unhealed. It exposes the difference between appearing strong and actually being at peace. And this exposure, this unbearable honesty, is where something sacred begins. Truth. For the first time, you're seeing the relationship without illusion. You start realizing that what you called love was often maintenance, emotional upkeep for something already on life support. You weren't fighting for connection. You were fighting to keep an illusion alive, to hold on to a feeling that existed mostly in memory. That's why the silence hurts, because it's revealing how much of your peace depended on something that was never stable to begin with. But pain, in this phase, becomes a kind of light. It cuts through the haze and shows you what was real and what was never built to last. The attention wasn't love. The reassurance wasn't safety. The control wasn't strength. And the absence you now feel isn't punishment. It's purification. You are being stripped of the illusions that once made you feel secure, so you can finally see what security actually is. Peace that doesn't depend on anyone else's response. Silence does what chaos never could. It dismantles the ego quietly, methodically, mercilessly. It removes the layers you built to survive, the overgiving, the over-explaining, the need to prove. It teaches through emptiness. It burns through false strength. And in that burn, you find yourself beginning to breathe differently, slower, steadier, deeper. That's not weakness. That's transformation. You're learning the art of existing without constant affirmation. You're learning that peace built on another person's presence isn't peace at all. It's dependency with a prettier name. And maybe she's learning too, because silence doesn't choose sides. It humbles both egos the same way. She's starting to see the hollowness behind her pride, the fragility of her control, the cost of her distance. You're starting to understand that you weren't meant to chase, you were meant to reclaim. The space that once felt like rejection now feels like clarity. The quiet that once terrified you is slowly becoming sacred ground. This is where the illusions die, but you don't die with them. You rise from them. You start standing in your own worth, independent of any reaction. You stop seeking proof that you matter, because you finally see you always did. What's breaking right now isn't your heart. It's your attachment to misunderstanding love. So what if the silence isn't punishing you, brother? What if it's purifying you? What if every unanswered message, every quiet night, every moment you thought was loss, is actually life-clearing space for something real? Sit with that question before you move forward, because what comes next isn't another heartbreak. It's the confrontation that decides who you become. The fight inside yourself begins now. Phase 4. The inner battle. When Stoicism becomes survival. This is where the real war begins, not between you and her, but between you and your own impulses. Every nerve in your body wants to break the silence. Your hand hovers over the phone. Your mind rehearses what you'd say if you reached out. You tell yourself it's love, that maybe one honest message could fix it. But it's not love. It's the ego gasping for air, desperate to prove it still has control. The discomfort you feel right now isn't rejection, it's withdrawal. You're detoxing from emotional dependency, from the constant reassurance that once kept you stable. It's not her voice you miss, it's the feeling of being regulated by someone else's attention. This is where Stoicism stops being something you admire and becomes something you must live. It's no longer philosophy, it's survival. You start observing your impulses instead of obeying them. You begin to realize that emotions are waves. They rise, they crash, they fade. And strength, real strength, isn't found in fighting the tide. It's found in standing firm while it breaks around you. You breathe, you watch, you wait, you choose stillness, even when every instinct screams for movement. Each time you resist the urge to reach out, your discipline sharpens like steel. Every moment you sit in that silence without breaking it, you're rewiring your nervous system to stop chasing chaos. You're teaching your body that peace doesn't require permission. This is emotional alchemy, the process of turning pain into patience, craving into control. The same energy that once made you restless now becomes the foundation of your focus. What once felt like unbearable waiting now feels like building. You're not losing ground, you're gaining mastery over yourself. The ego wants movement. It survives on response, on the illusion of progress. But mastery, true mastery, is found in restraint. Stillness is not weakness, it's precision. Each time you choose not to act out of emotion, you remind yourself who's in command. This is how warriors are built, not through reaction, but through control. Not in the noise of conflict, but in the discipline of silence. Because every unspoken word, every unsent message, every pause is a small victory in the war against your lower self. And while you're steadying yourself in this discipline, something subtle but powerful begins to shift on her side too. The distance that once made her feel powerful now starts to echo like emptiness. The silence that gave her control now starts to feel like loss. She expected your quiet to be temporary, a reaction, not a choice. She assumed you'd eventually break, reach out and restore her comfort. But when your silence holds, when your energy stays centered and your peace doesn't bend, the illusion breaks for her too. The same silence that once weakened you now begins to strengthen you, and it starts to weigh on her. This is the shift no one talks about. The point where your calm becomes more commanding than her control. The moment your stillness starts to echo louder than any words she could speak. She begins to question the balance, to wonder why you haven't folded, to feel the void she thought would only exist for you. And you, for the first time, feel peace not as absence, but as presence. You begin to understand why Stoics called self-control the highest form of freedom. Because what's really happening here isn't the end of something. It's the forging of someone. You're learning to hold your composure while the old version of you burns away. You're becoming the man who doesn't react to everything that shakes him, who no longer trades his peace for temporary comfort. This is what it means to build inner strength, to be able to feel everything and still remain unmoved. So ask yourself this, brother. Have you noticed how peace starts to feel powerful the moment you stop begging for it? That's not coincidence. It's transformation. That's the shift from dependency to dominance, from noise to authority. And when that realization hits you, you'll understand why silence has always been the strongest voice in the room. Because from this point forward, your calm isn't submission, it's command. And the moment you own that truth, the balance of power between you and her changes forever. Phase 5. The power reversal, when silence becomes the mirror. There's a moment in every power shift when everything turns quietly in your favor. It doesn't come with a grand announcement. It begins when you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, defending, or chasing. That's the moment silence changes sides. It no longer belongs to her. It belongs to you. What she once used as a weapon becomes your greatest advantage. At first, she thought distance made her untouchable. She used it to test your patience, to regain control, to see if you would crumble under the weight of uncertainty. But you didn't. You didn't flinch. You didn't chase. You stood still. And in that stillness, the balance shifted. Because silence, brother, is loyal to whoever can master it. The one who can stay calm when nothing is certain, who can hold his center when his ego is screaming for reaction. That's the one who holds the power. The more you remained grounded, the more her own silence started working against her. It was supposed to protect her pride. Instead, it began to expose her emptiness. She starts to feel what you once felt, the uncertainty, the curiosity, the unease. The quiet that used to give her control now begins to haunt her. You can almost feel it when it happens. The air between you changes. The same silence that once punished you now pulls at her thoughts. She starts wondering if you've really moved on. Her ego needs proof that she still has an effect on you. So she begins to test the waters. A story posted by accident. A text with no real purpose. A breadcrumb tossed into the quiet, not out of care, but out of curiosity. It's her way of saying, "Are you still there? Do I still matter?" But you've changed. You've learned the difference between attention and intention. You no longer mistake a ping for progress or curiosity for care. You understand that people test what they can no longer control. So you don't respond. You don't feed the noise. You filter it. Every unreturned message, every unreacted post, every moment you refuse to validate her confusion. That's not coldness, it's composure. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself. In that restraint lies dominance. Not dominance over her, but over yourself. You've stopped being reactive. You've stopped being predictable. And the moment you became unpredictable, the dynamic reversed. She used silence to feel powerful. Now she feels powerless inside the very silence she created. That's how energy shifts, quietly, decisively, without revenge, without a word. The one who can remain calm in the storm doesn't just survive it, he commands it. She starts to feel the weight of her own silence now. It doesn't give her the same comfort anymore. It doesn't feel like control. It feels like consequence. Her thoughts start replaying the moments you used to fill the gap, the texts you used to send, the reassurance she used to expect. But now there's nothing, no echo, no reaction, just stillness. The longer that stillness lasts, the louder it gets. It begins to reveal what she never wanted to see, how much her sense of worth depended on your attention. Meanwhile, your peace starts transforming into presence. The quiet that once felt unbearable now feels sacred. You start realizing that real power isn't about getting a reaction. It's about no longer needing one. You've stopped trying to win her back and started winning yourself back. That's when she begins to notice something different about you. A calm she can't shake, a distance she can't close, an energy that no longer revolves around her. And here's the truth she's beginning to understand. You didn't disappear out of pride. You evolved out of necessity. You didn't go silent to hurt her. You went silent to heal yourself. You chose growth over games, purpose over pleading, direction over drama. What she's feeling now isn't confusion, it's recognition. She's starting to see the man she took for granted, standing in his own gravity, no longer orbiting hers. That's the power reversal. It's not about making her chase. It's about no longer needing to. It's about showing, without saying a word, that you have nothing to prove. Silence has become your mirror. It reflects your discipline, your detachment, your evolution. And when she looks into that mirror, she doesn't see control anymore. She sees consequence. So let me ask you something, brother. Have you ever seen someone underestimate your silence until it started haunting them? Because that's where you are now. You've become the reflection she can't escape. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Phase 6. The collapse. 2 egos, 1 mirror. There comes a point in every silent standoff when the performance ends, when silence stops being a weapon and becomes a mirror. It's not loud, not dramatic, but it's real. This is where both egos begin to collapse, one quietly, one loudly. Hers collapses because control stops working. Yours collapses because validation stops mattering. And that's the paradox of healing. Both sides lose the illusion, but only one grows from it. You thought love died, but it wasn't love that broke. It was attachment, the ego's obsession with control. You see, she mistook distance for safety. She believed that pulling away kept her power intact. That silence would protect her from vulnerability. And you mistook connection for certainty, thinking that constant communication equaled emotional security. But both of you were building walls, not bridges, one made of pride, the other of fear. And when silence entered, those walls began to crack. No arguments, no confrontation, just quiet truth filling the space where noise used to live. That's what makes silence so powerful. It doesn't scream, it reveals. It doesn't attack, it exposes. It doesn't seek revenge, it restores balance. When there's no more talking, there's nothing left to hide behind. She starts scrolling through old messages, replaying memories, tracing through your digital shadow, not out of love yet, but out of confusion. Her ego is disoriented. It's searching for the pattern that used to keep her safe, your pursuit, your reassurance, your reaction. And when it finds none, something inside her begins to tremble. For the first time, she's facing what you already have. The emptiness that follows control. The silence that once gave her power now starts to echo back insecurity. She doesn't understand why you stopped playing the game, why the script no longer works. But you do. You've already moved beyond the performance. You're not trying to win her back because you've already won yourself back. You're not chasing closure because you've become it. You've stopped performing strength because you've started embodying it. This is the moment where Stoicism and psychology intersect. You begin to see that peace was never meant to erase pain. It was meant to exist alongside it. Peace isn't the absence of emotion. It's the dominance of clarity. It's not pretending the storm doesn't exist. It's becoming the eye within it. You stop reacting because you've learned to observe. You stop explaining because you no longer need validation. You've reached the kind of calm that unnerves people who thrive on chaos. The kind that comes from inner discipline, not external reassurance. And her world feels different now, too. The silence that once validated her confidence now confronts her pride. The distance that once made her feel powerful now exposes her isolation. For so long, she believed your chasing confirmed her worth. Now your stillness makes her question it. She's not just missing your presence, she's missing the reflection of herself that your attention used to provide. And that's what silence does. It removes the mirror and forces both people to face themselves. This is the collapse. 2 egos, 1 truth, both stripped of their illusions. One is humbled by the loss of control, the other is reborn through the loss of dependency. It's not about who comes out on top, it's about who comes out aware. Because healing doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like surrender. The kind of surrender that doesn't mean giving up, but letting go. You release the need to prove, to explain, to win. You allow silence to do what words never could, to separate illusion from authenticity. And as you sit in that stillness, something shifts deep within. You start to understand that all along, it wasn't her reaction you needed. It was your own realization. The silence was never there to punish you. It was there to purify you. It stripped away the noise so you could finally hear yourself again. The ego collapses, but the self awakens. You stop fighting the storm because you've become the calm that holds it. This is where power changes meaning. It's not about dominance or control, it's about emotional sovereignty. When you no longer depend on someone else's approval to feel steady, you become untouchable. And as your ego falls away, so does hers. The dynamic that once defined you both dissolves into truth. No winners, no losers, just clarity. So here's the question you need to ask yourself as the dust settles. What if this collapse isn't the end of anything, but the beginning of everything? Because what comes next isn't revenge, and it's not reunion, it's rebirth. The silence that once broke you is now rebuilding you into something greater. Are you ready for that transformation? Phase 7. The rebirth, when silence becomes alignment. One morning, you wake up and realize something has changed. The storm inside you has gone quiet. The craving, gone. No urge to check your phone. No temptation to prove your worth. No more rehearsing words you'll never send. The same silence that once tore you apart is now the foundation beneath your feet. What used to feel like emptiness now feels like alignment. You move slower, but with precision. Sharper, more deliberate. You're not reacting. You're responding. You're not chasing peace anymore. You're protecting it. This is what growth feels like when it stops being painful and starts being purposeful. You notice your energy isn't leaking through explanation anymore. You no longer feel the need to convince anyone of your intentions. Your calm begins to speak for you, louder, clearer, stronger than words ever could. And that calm is unshakable because it's no longer dependent on outcomes. It's born from the choice to let go, not the need to be right. You start realizing this was never about getting her back. It was about getting yourself back, the version of you that was steady, grounded, whole. That's what alignment is, when what you think, what you feel, and what you do are finally in harmony. You're not fighting for peace, you're defending it. You're not waiting to be seen. You're living in a way that doesn't require recognition. You stop chasing closure because you are the closure. The silence that once felt like a void now feels like your home. It's not isolation, it's clarity. It's the difference between running from pain and walking with purpose. And while you rebuild quietly, something begins to crumble on the other side. The control she once held starts to echo back at her. Her fortress of distance, once built to feel powerful, begins to sound hollow. The same silence that once gave her confidence now haunts her. She checks her phone, not to message you, but to see if you're still there. She scrolls through old conversations, searching for the man she used to know. But you're gone. Not physically, not even out of reach, but emotionally, spiritually. You've outgrown the version of yourself that begged for connection. You've replaced him with a man who commands peace without saying a word. That's the full circle of silence. It begins as loss, but ends as liberation. You didn't win by talking louder or proving your worth. You won by mastering the pause, by realizing that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. The moment you chose stillness over reaction, you stopped being controlled by emotion and started being guided by awareness. When silence becomes a choice, it stops being a punishment. It becomes power. This is Stoicism in its purest form, calm under fire, strength without noise. The ego doesn't collapse because someone broke it. It collapses because you stopped feeding it. You stopped chasing validation, and suddenly the hunger disappeared. You stopped needing to be understood, and that became your freedom. You've entered a state most never reach. Emotional sovereignty, the kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't prove, doesn't compete. The kind that simply exists, unbothered, self-sufficient, complete. And now the balance has shifted entirely. The silence that once belonged to her now belongs to you. It doesn't isolate you anymore. It anchors you. You've stopped orbiting chaos and started revolving around clarity. Your presence has changed. Your energy has weight. You didn't disappear out of anger. You disappeared to realign with your own gravity. You're not running from the past. You're rooted in purpose. And when you reach this point, you understand the secret most men never do. That silence wasn't the end of your story. It was the beginning of your becoming. Because once you've met yourself in the quiet, once you've looked your pain in the eye and found peace instead of panic, you can never go back to noise. You stop needing chaos to feel alive. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You stop confusing attention for love. The silence that once broke you has rebuilt you, stronger, wiser, untouchable. You've become the calm in a world addicted to reaction. Brother, let me ask you this. What did silence teach you about yourself? Was it pain, or was it power in disguise? Share your answer in the comments. Your story might be the mirror another man needs tonight to find his own peace, his own clarity, his own rebirth. Because once you've learned to master the quiet, you've already won the loudest battle of all. Brother, if this truth reached you, don't let it fade here. Anchor it, like this video, so other men can find it when they need it most. Subscribe to Stoic Station, where we turn heartbreak into discipline and silence into strength. Because now you understand, the silence wasn't punishment, it was preparation. It stripped away your illusions, burned through your ego, and rebuilt you into a man who doesn't react. He leads. So tell me, brother, when you finally stopped chasing, what shifted inside you? Did peace start to feel powerful? Did clarity start to feel like freedom? Share your story below. Your reflection might be the mirror that helps another man rise tonight. And remember this, silence doesn't just end the noise, it reveals who you are without it. That's where the real transformation lives. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll go even deeper into the psychology of loss, power, and the quiet strength that makes a man unforgettable.